They say blood is thicker than water, but no one tells you that sometimes, blood can drown you. I never imagined that the sound of a moving truck would be the sound of betrayal. But there I was, 56 years old, standing on the front porch of my Charleston home with a watering can in my hand, watching my entire life being loaded into a vehicle that had no right to be there. The morning had started like any other. Birds singing in the live oaks, Spanish moss swaying in the gentle breeze, the golden sunlight filtering through the old trees that had stood sentinel over Broad Street for longer than I had been alive. I had been tending to my orchids when the diesel engine roar shattered the peace. My name is Margaret Reed. And this is the story of how I learned that being strong for others can sometimes mean forgetting to be strong for yourself. The moving truck squealed to a stop right in front of my gate. Before I could even set down my watering can, my younger brother Daniel stepped out, and his wife Tiffany emerged like a storm dressed in designer clothes. She wore a coral-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and her heels clicked sharply against the cobblestone walkway. Daniel hung back, his eyes darting everywhere except toward me. Two burly movers jumped out, already wearing gloves and carrying clipboards. Tiffany pushed past me, her perfume overwhelming, and threw open my front door as if she had every right to do so. "This is for our new house," she announced to the movers. "We'll need that big screen TV, the side-by-side refrigerator, and definitely those landscape paintings." I stood frozen. "Tiffany, what are you doing? You cannot just take my things." She turned to me with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, Margaret, do not be so dramatic. You do not need all this stuff. You live alone. Think of it as helping family." The word family from her mouth felt like a weapon. I watched, helpless, as the movers began slapping neon stickers on my furniture, my television, my refrigerator, the painting of the low-country marsh that my father had commissioned before he died. "Stop," I said weakly. I tried to step forward, but Tiffany blocked me. "Margaret, you are being selfish. This is what family does. They share." Daniel finally spoke from the doorway. "Maggie, it's just stuff. You know, we would not ask if we did not really need it." Just stuff. The words hit me like a slap. This was not just stuff. This was my life. These were things I had worked 2 jobs to afford. Every piece had a story. But looking at Daniel, unable to meet my eyes, I felt something crack inside me. Over the next 20 minutes, I watched my home being systematically stripped. The movers worked with practiced efficiency. Tiffany directed them like a general, pointing with manicured nails. When one mover reached for the marsh painting, I rushed forward and grabbed the frame. No, not this one. This was my father's. Tiffany sighed and pulled it from my hands. "Margaret, your father would have wanted Daniel to have nice things too. This way, it stays in the family." The frame slipped from my fingers. Daniel turned away, suddenly interested in a crack in the porch railing. When the truck finally pulled away, I stood in my living room feeling the silence close in. The space where my television had been looked like a wound. The kitchen felt cavernous without the refrigerator. I sank onto my couch and tried to understand what had just happened. This was not the first time. The realization hit me like cold water. This had been building for years. I was 16 when our parents died. First our father, killed in an accident at the Charleston port. Then our mother, 6 months later, her heart giving out from grief. Daniel was only 8. I remember standing in this kitchen, holding bills I did not understand, looking at my little brother and knowing everything had changed. I had plans. I was supposed to start at the College of Charleston that fall. I had dreams of becoming a librarian. Instead, I got a job at the college library, but not as a student. I shelved books for people my age who were living the life I should have had. At night, I worked at an antique bookshop on King Street. Every penny went into keeping us afloat. I made sure Daniel had 3 meals a day, even if I ate toast for dinner. I made sure his clothes were new, even if mine were hand-me-downs. I helped him with homework, watched him grow from a scared little boy into a teenager with big dreams. Daniel loved to draw buildings. He talked about leaving, about making something of himself. And I encouraged him. I believed in him. Every sacrifice felt worth it. When Daniel brought Tiffany home for the first time, I knew something had shifted. She swept into our house like she was inspecting a property. "What a quaint place," she said, making quaint sound like an insult. "It has so much potential. Of course, it would need a complete renovation." I saw Daniel's face flush with embarrassment. This house had kept us safe, but through Tiffany's eyes, it was old, shabby, not good enough. The taking started small. Tiffany admired my mother's recipe books and slipped them into her handbag. "They will be safer at our place." Daniel stood by the door, jingling his car keys. Then it was my father's china. "Tiffany wanted them for Sunday dinner. It will make everything feel more like family," she said, emphasizing family in a way that made me feel like a distant relative. My grandmother's quilt disappeared next, then tools from my father's workshop. Each time, Tiffany had a reason. Each time, she used that phrase that became like a knife. "It is all family stuff anyway, Margaret." And each time, Daniel said nothing. His silence became its own betrayal. I began to feel like a ghost in my own home. Tiffany would call before visits, telling me what else they needed. A lamp, kitchen knives, the antique mirror. I would hang up feeling my chest tighten with anxiety. I wanted to say no, but then I would think about Daniel as a little boy, crying for our mother, and how I had promised to always take care of him. My neighbor Linda noticed. She was a retired school teacher who had lived on Broad Street longer than my family. She found me one afternoon staring at the blank wall where my mother's china cabinet had stood. "They took the cabinet too?" Linda asked quietly. I just nodded. "Margaret Reed, when are you going to say enough?" "He is my brother. He is all the family I have left." "And what are you to him? Because from where I am standing, you look like a bank he keeps withdrawing from." I wanted to defend Daniel, but the words would not come. When had he last asked how I was doing? When had he visited without needing something? When had he remembered my birthday? After the moving truck incident, Linda came back with her laptop. "I have been recording. My doorbell camera catches your front porch. I have footage of every time they have come over in the last 6 months." On her screen, I watched a silent film of my own exploitation. Tiffany carrying out my mother's recipe books, Daniel loading the china cabinet. The moving truck from this morning. "You need to document everything," Linda said firmly. "Get your receipts. Photograph what is left. Do not let them say those things belong to them." That night, I did not sleep. I went through my filing cabinet, pulling out every receipt, every warranty, every piece of documentation. I was methodical about record keeping. The television, bought 3 years ago. The refrigerator, purchased 18 months ago, complete with warranty registration in my name. I had photographs too. Old family photos showing my parents with that marsh landscape. Pictures of me as a child with the paintings visible in the background. I created a digital folder and emailed it to myself for timestamps. Then I remembered something. When I bought the refrigerator, I had registered the serial number with the manufacturer. I logged into my account. There it was. My refrigerator, registered to Margaret Reed at this address. I stared at that serial number for a long time. Then I did something that surprised me. I ordered a small GPS tracking device and taped it inside the refrigerator panel. 2 weeks later, Daniel called. "Maggie, we need a few more things. Tiffany says the house does not feel complete yet." I opened my mouth to say yes. The word was automatic. But then I looked around my stripped house and something in me finally broke. "No," I said. Silence. "What?" I said, "No, Daniel. You cannot have anything else." "But Maggie, we are family. Family helps each other." "When was the last time you helped me, Daniel? When was the last time you asked if I needed anything? When did you last visit just to see me?" "That is not fair. You know we have been busy." "Too busy to notice you have been emptying my house? Too busy to remember I gave up everything for you?" "I never asked you to do that," he said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. He was right. He never asked. But he took, again and again. "You are right," I said, shaking. "You never asked, but I gave anyway, and now I am asking you to stop taking." He hung up without goodbye. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. The GPS tracker was moving. I watched in real time as my refrigerator traveled across Charleston, stopping at a gated community on the north side. My hands shook as I called Linda. "They took the refrigerator. They actually kept it." Linda's voice was steely. "Call the police, Margaret, right now." I had never called police before. The dispatcher listened carefully and said an officer would meet me at the address. Linda drove me there. The neighborhood was everything Daniel had dreamed of. Wide streets, pristine landscaping, magazine-perfect houses. We found the house easily, a large colonial with white columns. And parked in the driveway was the moving truck, its back doors open, movers unloading my refrigerator. 2 police cruisers pulled up. I watched from Linda's car, heart pounding. The officers approached the movers, then Tiffany, who appeared in the doorway looking annoyed. I saw her face change from irritation to panic. That was when I got out. Tiffany saw me and her face flushed red. "What are you doing here? Did you call the police? Are you insane?" "Ma'am," one officer said calmly, "do you have proof of ownership for this refrigerator?" "Of course, it is ours. We just bought it." "Actually," I said, voice steady, "it is mine. I have the receipt, warranty registration, and serial number." I showed the officer my phone with all the documentation. He checked the serial number on the refrigerator. Then he looked at Tiffany. "Ma'am, the serial numbers match. This is registered to Margaret Reed. Do you have documentation showing you purchased this?" Tiffany opened and closed her mouth. "She gave it to us. Tell them, Margaret." "I did no such thing. You took it while I tried to stop you." The second officer reviewed Linda's video footage on a tablet. "Ma'am, we have video evidence of these items being removed without clear consent." Daniel appeared behind Tiffany, his face white. "Maggie, what is going on?" "What is going on," I said without shaking, "is that I am taking back what is mine." Tiffany argued, threatened, cried. But the evidence was overwhelming. The officers impounded the refrigerator as stolen property. They noted other items matching my inventory. The marsh painting, my television, my grandmother's quilt. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. This was not the boy I raised. That boy had been sweet and grateful. This man was a stranger. I gave up everything for you, I said quietly. My education, my 20s, my chance at my own family. I worked 2 jobs to keep you safe, and you repaid me by letting your wife rob me blind. Maggie, I am sorry, he said, tears in his eyes. I did not know it had gotten this bad. Did you ever ask me? Did you ever ask if I minded? He looked at his expensive shoes and said nothing. That evening, police returned my belongings. My refrigerator was plugged back in, my television rehung, the marsh painting back on its wall. But I knew this was not over. By the next morning, Tiffany had launched a social media campaign. She posted in every Charleston neighborhood group, painting herself as the victim. She called me selfish, bitter, ungrateful. She said I was hoarding while they struggled to furnish their first home. For a few hours, it worked. Comments rolled in from people who did not know me. They called me heartless. One suggested I needed a conservator. I sat watching my reputation destroyed in real time, feeling paralyzed. But Linda had other ideas. You cannot let her control the narrative, Linda said firmly. If you do not tell your side, her lies become truth. That night, I created a single post. No long explanation, no emotional plea, just photographs and facts. Each item listed with purchase date, receipt, documentation. The refrigerator with its serial number, the paintings with certificates of authenticity, the doorbell camera footage with timestamps, the police report. At the end, I added one sentence. These are facts. Make of them what you will. Within an hour, the response was overwhelming. People who had known me for decades began commenting. The librarian from my old job, the bookshop owner, former neighbors who remembered me raising Daniel alone. One woman wrote, "If Margaret Reed says those items belong to her, then they belong to her. That girl worked her fingers to the bone raising her brother." Shameful. The tide turned. For every person who believed Tiffany, 5 more defended me. Tiffany tried to fight back, but each accusation met a wall of people who knew me. By midnight, she had deleted all her posts. Daniel's social media went silent. 2 weeks later, I received a call from a law firm. Daniel wanted mediation to settle things without court. The meeting was in a conference room, smelling of leather and old paper. I sat across from Daniel and Tiffany. Daniel looked terrible, eyes red-rimmed, weight lost. Tiffany sat rigid, arms crossed, hostile. The lawyer laid out the situation. I had grounds to press charges, but I had indicated willingness to accept civil resolution. I had thought hard about what I wanted. Not revenge, acknowledgement, truth, insurance this never happened again. My demands were simple. Return all remaining items. Financial compensation for distress and security system installation. A written, notarized statement acknowledging the items had been mine and taken without proper consent. That is ridiculous, Tiffany said immediately. We are not admitting anything. Then we go to court, I said calmly, and all this becomes public record. Your employer will find out, your neighbors, everyone in Charleston. Daniel put his hand on Tiffany's arm. What happens after we sign? Then it is over. No criminal charges, no further legal action, but also no more contact unless I initiate it. You will not come to my house. You will not call asking for things. If you want a relationship with me, you will have to earn it, and that starts with respecting my boundaries. Daniel picked up a pen with shaking hands and signed. He pushed the papers to Tiffany, who scrawled her name in barely controlled fury. I took my copies and looked at Daniel. I do not know if you remember this, but when you were 9, you broke your arm. You were so scared. I held your hand through everything, slept in that hospital chair for 3 nights. Do you remember what you said when we went home? His eyes were wet. He shook his head. You said, I am so glad you are my sister. You are the best person I know. I stood, gathering my things. I hope someday you find that person again. The next weeks were spent reclaiming my home. Items came back, some damaged. My mother's china was missing pieces. One painting had a tear, but they were home. I used the settlement money for a security system and new locks. I hired someone to repair wall damage and bought paint, a warm cream color. I spent weekends repainting each room. The house began to feel like mine again, not my parents' house where I raised Daniel, not a museum of sacrifice, but my home, chosen and claimed by me. One Saturday afternoon, I heard a knock. My heart jumped with anxiety. But when I opened the door, Daniel stood there alone, holding a cardboard box. I found this in the garage, he said. It should have never left. Inside was my mother's tea set, the delicate cream porcelain with green ivy that she only used on special occasions. Every piece was there. Tiffany wanted to use it for a party, Daniel said flatly. I told her no. It goes back to you. Do you want to come in? I asked, surprising myself. Are you sure? For tea. Just tea. Nothing more. Not yet. We sat at the kitchen table where we had shared countless meals. I poured tea into the delicate cups. We sat in awkward silence. "I am so sorry, Maggie," he finally said. "I let Tiffany convince me you did not care about those things. But I knew it was wrong, and I let it happen because it was easier than standing up to her." Why was it so easy to stand up to me but not to her? He looked at his tea. "Because you always forgave me. You always understood. You always put me first. And I took advantage. I have been taking advantage since I was 8. The honesty hurt, but it was what I needed to hear. "I cannot go back to how things were," I said carefully. "I cannot be the person who sacrifices everything and gets nothing. That version of me is gone. I know. I just want to try to be better. To be someone you can be proud of again." "Then show me. Do not tell me. Show me with actions. Respect my boundaries. Respect me." We finished tea in more comfortable silence. When he left, he paused. "Can I come back next week? Help you finish painting?" "You can come back. But Daniel, if Tiffany comes, the door stays closed." "She will not be coming. We are separating." I wanted to feel victorious, but just felt tired. "I am sorry." "Do not be. You were right about everything." The following Saturday, Daniel came with paint supplies. We did not talk much as we painted. The silence was not uncomfortable. He laughed when paint dripped on his shoes. Genuine laughter that reminded me of the boy he used to be. I smiled back, cautiously hopeful. This was not redemption, but it was a start. Over following months, Daniel came by regularly, sometimes with groceries, refusing payment, sometimes fixing things around the house. He was trying to make amends with actions. Meanwhile, I discovered my own life. I joined a book club, started watercolor classes, volunteered teaching adults to read. One evening in my newly painted living room, surrounded by books I loved and art I had chosen, I realized something profound. For so long, I had defined myself by what I gave up, by sacrifices for Daniel. But I was more than that, more than a caretaker, a martyr, someone existing to serve others. The house that had felt so empty now felt full again. I hosted gatherings. Linda came for tea weekly. My book club met in my living room. Women from watercolor class painted on my back porch. I had spent so much of my life focused on what I lost, on the education never finished and youth given up, that I never considered what I might still gain. At 56, I was not starting over. I was starting new. The spare room Daniel and I painted became my studio. I filled it with art supplies, books, a comfortable chair. But more than that, I opened it to other women who needed space to create, think, just be. It became a gathering place. One afternoon, months after mediation, while sitting in that studio with other women, I heard a knock. Daniel stood on my porch looking nervous. "I have something for you. I have been looking for weeks." He held out a smaller box. Inside were photographs I thought lost forever. Pictures of our parents, pictures of us as children. Pictures I assumed Tiffany had taken or thrown away. "I found them in storage," Daniel explained. "Tiffany had boxed them up. I think she was planning to sell them or throw them out. But these belong to you, to us." I took the box, tears pricking my eyes as I looked through photographs. My mother in her Sunday dress in front of the marsh painting. My father holding baby Daniel. Teenage me and 8-year-old Daniel on the first day of school, both trying to smile despite grief. "Thank you, these mean everything." "I know. That is why I spent 3 weekends digging through storage to find them." I invited him in for tea, and this time it felt natural. We looked through photographs together, sharing memories. He told me about the divorce, about therapy he had started, about figuring out who he was without Tiffany's influence. "I am learning I have been avoiding difficult things my whole life," he said. "First I let you handle everything. Then I let Tiffany make all decisions. I never learned to stand up for what I believed because I never had to. You always did it for me. And then when you had to choose, you did not know how. I chose wrong. I chose the easy way, and I lost you. I lost the person who mattered most." We talked for hours. Really talked. Maybe for the first time since childhood. It was not easy. Tears and hard truths and painful honesty. But it was real. As seasons changed and Charleston moved into fall, I settled into a life I never imagined. The house, once a shrine to sacrifice, had become a home full of laughter and purpose. Rooms Tiffany tried to empty now overflowed with life, with people who valued me. Daniel became a regular presence, on my terms. He came when invited, called before visiting. Respected my space and boundaries. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something resembling the relationship we should have had. Not perfect. Not without scars, but honest and mutual and based on respect. One October evening, I hosted a dinner party. Linda was there, women from my studio group, and Daniel. We gathered around my dining table and shared food and stories and laughter. I looked at these faces, at people who had chosen to be in my life, and felt contentment I had never known. After everyone left, Daniel was helping clean up. He paused while drying a dish. "Maggie, do you forgive me?" I thought carefully. I am getting there. Forgiveness is not a switch I can flip. It is a process. But you are doing the work. You are showing up. You are trying to be better. That means more than any apology. He nodded, accepting this. I can live with that. As winter approached, I found myself reflecting on the past year. I had started as a woman systematically stripped of everything she owned and valued. But in fighting back, in reclaiming what was mine, I discovered something more valuable than any possession. I had discovered my own worth. For decades, I measured my value by what I could give others, how much I could sacrifice, how much I could endure. But now I understood my value was intrinsic, not determined by my usefulness to others or willingness to accommodate their demands. It existed simply because I existed. The tea set Daniel returned sat in my china cabinet. But now I used it regularly, not just for special occasions but for ordinary Tuesday afternoons when friends came over. I refused to let it sit unused, gathering dust while waiting for a moment important enough. Every moment of my life was important enough now. One cold December evening, I sat in my living room with the marsh painting illuminated by soft lamplight. My father used to say that painting represented home. Not just a place, but a feeling of belonging, of peace, of being exactly where you were meant to be. Sitting there surrounded by the life I had built, I finally understood. This was home. Not because of walls or furniture or possessions, though those told my story, but because I had claimed it. I had fought for it. I had refused to let anyone take it from me. The doorbell rang. Daniel stood there with Chinese food. I was in the neighborhood, thought you might like company for dinner. You were not in the neighborhood, I said, because his apartment was across town. But I would love company. We ate at the kitchen table, sharing lo mein and stories. It was ordinary and comfortable and precious, precisely because it was not guaranteed or assumed or taken for granted. Every moment we spent together now was a choice, not an obligation imposed by blood or guilt. After dinner, as Daniel was leaving, he paused. Maggie, I never thanked you for raising me. I said thank you as a kid, but I did not understand what you gave up. I do now. Thank you for everything you sacrificed, even if I did not deserve it. You were a child. Children never ask to be born into tragedy. You did not owe me gratitude for keeping you safe and loved. That was my choice. But I owe you gratitude for how I treated you as an adult, for letting Tiffany use me to hurt you, for being too weak to stand up for you. You deserved better. Yes, I did. And now you are giving me better. That is what matters. After he left, I walked through my house, turning off lights, checking locks. Each room held memories now, not just of loss and pain but of reclamation and growth. The studio where women gathered. The living room where book club met and laughter echoed. The kitchen where I cooked for people I cared about and who cared about me. As I climbed into bed, I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, standing on her porch watching her life loaded into a truck, feeling helpless and hollow. That woman believed her value lay in her willingness to be taken from. She believed love meant endless giving, with no receiving, that family meant sacrificing yourself until nothing remained. But I was not that woman anymore. I had learned that love without respect is not love at all, that family without boundaries is not family but exploitation, that giving without receiving is not generosity but self-destruction. I had learned I could be kind without being a doormat, compassionate without being a victim, forgiving without being foolish. Most importantly, I learned it was never too late to start valuing yourself. The house that once felt like a prison now felt like a sanctuary I had built with my own hands. The walls I had painted, the boundaries I had set, the life I had chosen. It was mine in a way it had never been before. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I had not felt in 40 years. I felt free. The tea set sat downstairs, ready for tomorrow's gathering. The photographs Daniel returned were being sorted, memories preserved and honored. The marsh painting glowed softly in the lamplight. And in the studio, art supplies waited for the next woman who would walk through my door looking for space to create, to heal, to become. They said blood was thicker than water. But I learned that the bonds we choose, the relationships we build on mutual respect and genuine care, those are the ties that truly sustain us. Blood might connect us, but respect and boundaries and reciprocal love are what make us family. For the first time in my life, I had a family I had chosen, a community I had built, a home that was truly mine. Not because I fought off every intruder or locked every door or built impenetrable walls, but because I learned the most important lesson of all. I learned that I was worth fighting for.